I am very pleased to introduce Michelle Morrissey. She comes here from Spoken with Authority. She has over 2 decades of experience as a speech pathologist and as a public speaking coach. And she is going to be leading us through a very fun, interactive workshop, showing us how you can become a better communicator and develop your own authentic speaking voice and speaking presence. Michelle, I don't want to take any more of your time, so I will turn things over to you.
10,999,950. That number represents the number of bits of information per second that we process subconsciously. I hate to catch you while you're eating, but would anyone venture to guess how many bits of information we process consciously? No guesses? 50. How's that for an uneven score? So you think about, what does that have to do with a workshop about communication and executive presence? Well, I'm glad you asked or wondered. When we're having a conversation, it seems simple, right? I speak, hopefully you're listening. But that's the conscious reality. There are at least 6 subconscious interactions that are happening at any given time in just a 2-way communication. Even right now, I am maintaining my image of myself. I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about your perception of me. And that goes both ways. So you can see where in a simple conversation, there's a lot that can go wrong. In every communication or active communication, there are 3 purposes that are on the table: to either connect, to relate, or to influence. Now, I've been asked, what's the difference between connecting and relating? Well, connecting is establishing engagement. Relating is maintaining engagement. And then with influence, there are 3 possible outcomes. They are compliance, commitment, or conflict. You wonder, where might the conflict come from? Well, if there are any challenges to one's sense of certainty, status, autonomy, relatedness, or fairness, we're more likely to respond with knee-jerk reactions. So what we're going to do over this next hour, we're going to replace some of our knee-jerk reactions that are in response to subconscious interactions with executable conscious behaviors that will have you speaking confidently and hopefully saying it right the first time. You're going to have to take a little break from eating. So right now you're going to take your baseline video, and what you're going to do is you're going to take this video, and throughout the workshop you're going to self-assess on where you are on the different principles that you see here before you. You can choose on what you would like to record. You'll choose a partner. Your partner will record you on your device, and then you'll exchange the favor. And you can either talk about a success that you're proud of, a unique attraction in your hometown, or something you're excited about for the holidays. Really, it's up to you. But 90 seconds, I want you to record. Again, be recorded. Make sure you do not take a photo. A photo will not help you in this exercise. So are there any questions on what we're doing next? 90-second video, choose a partner. If you need a partner, Christine, Arthur are willing to assist. All right, let's bring it back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you can consider this sort of a launch of your self-coaching engagement. These strategies only work if you do. It generally takes about 2 months to establish a new behavior. As you analyze your video, if you see some behaviors that caught you off guard or that you had no idea that you were doing, have hope. Again, that's why we're here. But if you commit, as I said, to some of the strategies that we put before you today, you can surely improve. So I want to introduce you to some of your materials. If you've noticed, there are some yummies for dessert in front of you. Important note, this mint was processed in a facility that also processed nuts. So if you have a nut allergy, you might just want to look at how pretty and shiny it is. And why would we incorporate candy? I don't know if you've ever had the experience of going through a forest or a wooded area, I should say. And when you first start, you kind of had to create your own path. And then as more traveled the path, it got clearer and clearer. That which was grassy turns kind of into like a dirt road. And before you know it, when enough people have traveled through the same pathway, you have a clear path. That's basically how learning works. The more connections you make, the more your brain holds on to information. So yes, it is pretty and yummy and cool, but this is a partner in your learning, in making brain connections so that you can remember what you've experienced today. So, the first behavior you see is what? Anybody want to tell me?
Stance.
Stance. And why do you think stance would be represented by root spear? Play on words. Yes, you want to be rooted in the ground. Do we have any golfers in the house? Golfers? Okay. For onlookers, you would think that the power of your swing is in your arms, but where is the power? Where is the locus of power for a golfer?
The power from the legs comes from the wrist.
Yep, in your core. So it is with executive presence. When your core is strong, your stance is strong, you have established a great foundation. So here's how it should look. Knees apart, you should be able to catch a ball between your knees. If you have the propensity to sway, as I do when I'm tired at times, you may want to go a little wider. When we talk about executive presence, wider and bigger is better. You want to make sure that your knees are bent, that there is alignment between nose, chin, and belly button. Shoulders are up, rolled back, and hands stay here as a base position. It may feel a little awkward at first, but don't a new pair of shoes feel awkward when you first buy them? But after you wear them for a while, you break them in and you kind of make them your own. So it is with purposeful hand gestures. We recommend, again, that you start with your hands down to your side, but use purposeful gestures and return to home base. We want you to take a look at Jacinta, one of our previous clients. You're going to take a look at the before and after. During her before, I want you to think about what strikes you as strengths, what may look like an area of need in terms of stance, and how you think she rates. What do you think? What kind of feel does that have? Voice aside.
Sure.
Unsure? What made her look unsure? Flailing. I think Christine calls it the T-Rex, when your elbows are tucked, a lot of action in the arms. And really, if you're speaking, your respiration rate, in one of those subconscious messages, your respiration rate, your level of anxiety is picked up by your audience. So how would you feel if you were communicating with this person? Would you be concentrating on the message, or would you be concentrating on the behavior? Answers? Are the carbs kicking in already?
I think the paper for this one. She's like using it as
Another note to mention, speak up a little louder, that's a good one.
I think the paper, she's using it, it almost shows how nervous she is, like she's fiddling with it so much.
Yeah, it's almost like an attachment tool, right? Yeah. All right. Now let's look at Jacinta.
She keeps looking at the ceiling and the answers are written there.
Ah, we were just talking about that, weren't we, Arthur? Let's look
That's what
at
I
it.
did in law school.
What do you think? Arms down to the side, legs at a nice distance apart. What difference do you feel like the change makes in her overall presence and execution? Yeah. Small changes can make a big difference? Yeah, great. So you are going to look at your own video and self-evaluate. With the sound down, we want you to look at just about a minute, because we're squeezing a lot in an hour, just about a minute of your clip and rate yourself on your stance. Whether or not you see a sway, whether or not there appears to be stability in your stance, whether or not there's alignment between nose, chin, belly button, whether or not your shoulders are erect and rolled back, and whether or not there is stability in deliberate use of hand gestures. Okay, and remember your sensory experience. Eat it, smell it, taste it, spit it back out, but it's an important part of your learning experience. Right. Just when I tell you to eat, I'm going to tell you to spit it out in a minute. Just takes a second to make a connection. Okay. Now that you have a nice, strong stance, you're in position to have a strong sound. I talked about stance being the foundation of executive presence. It's also the foundation of a strong sound, having a low, robust, loud, low, and slow sound. Now, men generally communicate in a range of 3 octaves. Women, we communicate in a range of 5 octaves. So it's important to find that optimal pitch. Yes, we go from low to high, but there's a rich place you can reach that is going to be more of an attention getter. And this is how we find it. That low end of the it's what's called our optimal pitch. Now, sometimes we get feedback about whether or not it's appropriate to try to adjust one's tone, try to adjust one's manner of speaking. But I kind of consider it like code switching. When I'm either doing a podcast or I'm speaking, I generally have a lower, richer tone than I do at home. Just as I code switch grammar, I code switch sound and tone. So we want you to also take a look at Suzanne before and after, and want to see what observations you make about her sound.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Any comments? What did you notice?
Very quiet.
Okay, it was a short one. I can replay it again.
No,
You said very quiet.
no, I'm saying her sound, her voice.
Oh, I thought you were saying you couldn't hear.
No.
Okay, all right. Anything else? I pledge allegiance to the flag. Did anybody notice that? It's what's called upspeak. Generally in standard American English, the inflection decreases or falls at the end of the sentence. When we speak an upspeak or we rise at the end of the sentence, it can be confusing. That intonation pattern is more consistent with asking a question. And if your statement is perceived as a question when it's meant to be a statement, that can diminish overall presence. And let's
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What'd you think about the second time, her after? More commanding, less commanding. You don't have to agree. Yes? All right. I'm going to have you take a look at your videos, and obviously sound is going to be up this time. You want to make note about inflection. You want to make note about whether or not there were rises and pitches, whether or not your voice was loud, low, and slow, and see what you think about yourself. Okay? Any comments on your self-assessment on sound? Was anyone higher or lower than they thought they sounded? Does everybody feel like they were self-aware of vocal quality?
And there's a lot of ums.
Oh, we'll get to that. Just hold on, we'll get to the ums. Does anybody not like to hear the sound of their voice? Most people say that. You guys are a unique group. Well, I'm going to give you a random scientific fact. It's because we hear ourselves differently. When you're talking to someone else or you're communicating, you're only communicating through air conduction. When you are listening to your own voice, you're listening through air conduction as sound goes out of your mouth and filters through your auditory channels, and bone conduction, the vibration from your skull, adds that added element that you hear that other people don't hear. That is why when we hear ourselves, we say, that's not me. That doesn't sound like me. Yeah, yes, it is. Okay. All right. And you want to make sure that you, again, say that again?
I said, don't sound nuts.
What does nuts sound like? What did you mean? What does nuts sound like? That sounded like a fun statement. Okay. That's all right. We have a process for that too. All righty. Okay.
Extra lessons.
Hmm?
Extra lessons with that guy.
As we move on to the next element, I want to talk about the smile. Some feel like smiling diminishes executive presence. Does anyone feel that way? To be smiley just isn't in their character, or no? All right, well, here's how I feel about smiling. That it really is a neutral gesture. It's not cheesy at all. It says I'm neither here to control or dominate, and I'm not intimidated by the situation either. And that is why a lemon head is so fitting to represent the smile. Doesn't the look and taste of a lemon head just put you in a good mood, bring out the sunshine in you? Any other lemon head lovers? All right. So citrus, again, represents that enthusiasm, that energy that's important with communication. When we talk about smiling, it's just one element of facial expression. So again, although we're parceling out the element of the smile, even if you're not smiling, even giving a little eyebrow action lets the person know that you're engaged. So if you're not smiling, there are other things that you can do with your face to let folks know that you're engaged and would like to be there. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at Erica.
Here we are again today. Our politics are no less personal.
And what would you say about Erica's overall presence? Think about the elements that we've talked about already. Stance, you're not listening to sound, but thinking about her stance and her facial expression. What would you say? Good? A little clingy to the podium, but yes, she did present with a pleasant demeanor, but good can even get better with a little awareness. Ah, she let go of the podium. And what does that do for her overall communication of energy in her message? By just letting go of the podium, using her hands deliberately, you see a little more eyebrow movement. You see a difference? She went kind of from good to great? Yeah. Okay. And it is great to couple sound and smile together. So we're going to kind of marry the two and do some exercises. You ready? I want everybody to stand up. Let's get moving a little bit. We're going to start by low, slow, and rich tone and say, sushi chef 4 times. You ready? Let it boom. Let me hear it. Sushi chef. Sushi chef. Sushi chef. Sushi chef. Okay. Now we're going to be deliberate with articulatory precision, articulatory placement, putting your lips, mouth movement, doing everything at the right time. And we are going to do that by saying unique New York. Okay? Round those lips, pucker up. Don't be scared. Ready? 4 times. Unique New York. Unique New York. Unique New York. Unique New York. Does that feel strange to anybody? You can have a seat. There's one more, but I'll let you do that one. Last one. I told you we're going to marry sound and smile together. Toy boat. And try to end in a smile. Ready? 4 times. Toy boat. Toy boat. Toy boat. Toy boat. And if you're not familiar with Amy Cuddy's research, I would encourage you to do so. And then you can understand how the body influences the mind and the mind influences the body. So even sometimes if you do not feel like being cheery or happy, just smiling, holding certain power poses for 2 minutes gets those hormones flowing that are aligned with confidence. And then you can kind of feel good long enough to fake it until you make it. All right? Okay. Someone mentioned their ums. Anybody else have any ums or fillers or junk words that are not grammatically necessary in our messages? Isn't the only one. That's not the only offender. What are some others? Like. And. Mm-hmm. Yes. Just a series of run-on sentences. So. They're so abbreviated and they're so elongated. There are different levels of so. Any others? Say it again. You know. And earlier I talked about the notion of code switching. And secretly, don't tell Christine, I code switch when it comes to fillers, especially so. Sometimes it's a way of me becoming less formal. When you're around your friends and everyone's a professional, but nobody wants to be stuffy in what's supposed to be a relaxed environment, I give myself that liberty, some so vacations. Isn't that all right? But if you know that it's a big habit of yours and you have a presentation or a crucial conversation coming up, you might need to go on a filler fast where you monitor yourself for a few days before you, again, have to engage on something crucial just to make sure that you're able to show up. Because we talked about the power of the subconscious mind. And oftentimes, those habits are just picked up and we don't even know it. Give me 10 minutes with any friend from the South, and I will mirror their drawl almost immediately. So the subconscious is a powerful thing. So with silence, the power is in the pause. We don't like pauses. Pauses feel awkward. We feel like we have to fill up every space and moment in communication with some audible utterance. And that's where the ums and the so's come from. Could be that, or it could be an issue with word finding. Sometimes we have those tip of the tongue kind of experiences where we know we want to say it. If you know that a vocabulary word is stored and you just can't come up with it, that's a word finding issue. That's another reason we use fillers. And my suggestion for that is usually to trust the vocabulary that's going to come forth. If you're a professional, often we like to use the word. Sometimes you have to kind of weigh it. Are you going to fumble around for the perfect word? Are you going to be okay with maybe a less sophisticated word that may still prove your point, but you're able to do so fluently? Does that make sense? So again, there are a few reasons why we interject and use fillers. With the pause, it gives us time to gather our thoughts for the next utterance. You agree? Yes? What I want you to do now is look at your video, and I want you to calculate what's going to be your filler per minute ratio. You're gonna do that. You're gonna listen in that mirror, and jot down the number of fillers we use. Remember, we said not only but also like, so, but. Anything that is grammatically unnecessary to get your message across should be counted as a filler. Okay? So you're going to do that, obviously sound on for the next minute and see what you come up with. All right. You don't have to share. 0 to 2 is the range that we shoot for. 3 to 5, it should be one of your self-coaching goals over the next 2 months. And beyond that, it really warrants some attention. So let's look at some footage that will really drive home the power of the pause. All right.
But in terms of satisfying the perception that this is just all you have to do is pick up the phone, you get anything you want. I would have a lot to prove. I think.
Is anybody surprised by that? Even the best of them, so to speak, can have a moment. But a moment can have consequences.
Caroline Kennedy is trying to make the delicate transition from an intensely private life to public service. She's actively lobbying to replace Senator Hillary Clinton, who is slated to become Secretary of State. So Kennedy gave a series of interviews Saturday, but at times appeared uncomfortable and even agitated. The New York Daily News reports she, quote, rarely made eye contact. Her speech was often punctuated with extra you-knows and ums. And the New York Times transcript reveals she said you know a total of 138 times, and at one point 12 times in less than a minute. She also got testy when the Times reporters questioned her about the moment she decided she wanted to be a senator. She turned to them and said, quote, have you guys ever thought about writing for, like, a woman's magazine or something? When asked what she had against women's magazines, she responded, quote, nothing at all, but I thought you were the crack political team here.
So when we talk about engaging the subconscious, and I made a remark about where conflict comes from, and I mentioned challenges to status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And you see how her sense of status was challenged, and it sent her into this fight or flight, more of a psychological fight or flight pattern where she felt like she had to be defensive, and maybe she kind of lashed back in ways that are not characteristic of how she would typically communicate if she had been fully in control of the conversation. It just becomes a big snowball effect. Okay. I also want you to take a look at Sam's before and after.
Part to model the company, but the other important part is to really get that primary research and take the trips and do some boots on the ground, talks and understanding of where we've been, and really meet with company management and understand the supply chain. So this past year, we've had a number of auto sector stocks. The auto sector has been very prevalent in our screens this past year, showing approximately 100 companies in our screen, all ranging from around 8 to 15 times MCF yield. Seeing as that there's such a large
Also take a look at his stance, the
exposure,
wringing of the
you can see
hands,
here on
hand
our
in
slide,
pocket.
So my 2017 has basically been spent in three main places. One being Central Eastern Europe. I took a 3-day trip with Ben. Next was Japan.
All right.
And which we covered 3 chemical companies and our trip there, as well as Nexon. But today
Did anybody take note of some of the behaviors around stance before I even said something? The hands in the pocket, the wringing of the hands. Whenever we cross midline, you go from the left side of your body, right side of your body to touch the left, or vice versa. You are usually trying to self-soothe. There's some areas of our body that are very vascular, and when we are trying to make contact with those areas, we are typically trying to calm ourselves down. Our feet are another highly vascular zone that can kind of signal people on how you're feeling about a situation. Okay, it's one of those small behaviors when we tuck ourselves in order to try to kind of react to a psychological threat. All right, let's look at Sam's after.
Our jobs as analysts and PLARs are to work together with portfolio managers to update as well as to build new models, both on existing as well as new companies that we'd like to invest in. How we do that is by fundamental research, but also kicking tires on companies. And that being boots on the ground research, that primary research that you really need to understand the whole industry structure, talk to management, see where they're going, and see where they've been. And we do that by travel. So this past year I took 3 main trips. One, I went to Central Eastern Europe, we visited some of the banks.
Small changes making a big difference. What did you think about the comparison of that before and after? Did they seem any different? Say it again.
Much more authority.
Much more authority, absolutely. Any other comments or observations?
You still seem to be twisting and kind of moving quite a bit.
Yeah.
The stance wasn't bad. It was better.
Absolutely, yes. Definitely still some work to be done, but he obviously made some gains. We didn't see the hand wringing, didn't see hands in the pocket, but overall stance and posture was improved. Okay. And last but not least, Sight. And if you skipped your marshmallow, I didn't lead you to your marshmallow, you can go back to that. Sight is represented by what? Cinnamon. And why would cinnamon be apropos for sight and eye contact? Well, when we eat something spicy, don't we usually react? Maybe eyes watering, just again, kind of that rush to the eyes. That's exactly, again, what makes that a good connection. I talked earlier in terms of stance with making sure that there's alignment between the chin, the nose, and the belly button. Same thing when we're trying to hold gaze. You want to be able to hold gaze for at least 3 seconds. It's very uncomfortable for some. For others, there are cultural considerations that make gaze uncomfortable. But generally, in standard American communication, eye contact, at least 3 to 4 seconds, enhances likability. Just as I mentioned about stance and your arms being at your side, kind of as your home base, so it is with eye contact. We look, if we look away, we come back directly as quickly as possible and stay engaged as long as possible. Before you look at your video, I want you to look at your neighbor for at least 3 seconds. I want to see where eye gaze is on the squeamish meter with you. 3, 2, 1. All right. How was that for everybody? Anybody feel like they're going to pass out? He won't look at you. You're too powerful. He can't take all that executive presence. It's too much. Oh.
He's looking at me. He won't stop.
The staring game. All right. So as you enjoy, were you going to ask a question?
I've heard people suggest before, because when you're a speaker, if you make eye contact with people, it can be distracting to the speaker, to yourself. And I know what you're saying, you can increase likability, but I've heard people suggest that if you've got a crowd in front of you, you can kind of look just immediately over the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of is perceived, at least not as awkward as looking at your feet. It's almost like eye contact, but it's not as distracting as speaker. Have you heard the suggestion?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think it's almost prescriptive, right? Because I talked about the 6 subconscious activities, me thinking about myself, me thinking about you, and me thinking about you, thinking about me. Most often when we are distracted in public speaking, it's kind of as you're suggesting, you're thinking about what the person's thinking about you, and it can throw you off. Not everyone experiences that. Some can get in front of the room, flow with you, communicate with you as if they have known you all their lives. I think it's one of those things where the target should be to get in front of the room and communicate as if you're having a conversation. If along the way you kind of need some of those tricks until you get there, I think that's perfectly okay. It's kind of like with Sam. There were some grows that were still noted in the second video, but he still made improvement. And hopefully he continued to implement some strategies to get even better. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
So, yeah, bottom line, it's prescriptive. Yes, Arthur?
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
99% of our interactions with people aren't in front of a big group of people. So I think for one-on-one interactions
Mm-hmm.
and for small group interactions, eye contact always is helpful.
Any other questions or comments? Engagement, I love it. All right. Let's take a look at Nicole. Tell me what you think.
I'm not a native Washingtonian. I'm actually a native of the East Bay in California. Came to Howard University when I was a young person, and I've been in Washington all these years. I've been at Skadden Arps for 28 years, and at virtually,
Now let's talk about the total package. Once again, stance, even placement in the chair.
So I can actually.
Obviously, we're talking about eye contact, but also Nicole started with still continuing some of the hand holding. So you see how all of these behaviors work together?
One son who is grown, and a Rottweiler named Maya Emma, who is just about the most belligerent dog.
A belligerent dog. And here's Nicole after. Nicole's after has not been cooperating. Oh, here it is.
Hello, my name is Nicole Farrell, CA. And after 28 years of working at Skadden Arps, I specialize in anticipating and forecasting the needs of my attorneys and clients. To give you an example, we are a multinational firm, and we had a filing.
Just popcorn shout out. What about her overall stance? What do you see? You can have a sitting stance, obviously.
With conventional couriers, we weren't able to get.
Is her posture better? Yay or nay?
So
Yes.
I thought to myself that we might utilize the
What
skills
about
of our Beijing office.
sound and use of inflection and rate?
Arrange for a paralegal to
Much better, a lot more precise.
and deliver them so that they reached the party.
Still some
at a
self-soothing,
specified time. I was
but
able to
overall,
anticipate the needs of my attorney.
what do you think about the improvement? Much better. I want you to look at a minute of your video to assess your eye contact and sight. On whether or not there was a lot of darting, on whether or not you had a concentrated focal point, whether you looked engaged with your partner who was recording you. Did you do a video? Okay. You got another 10. I know. And I apologize for the statement that sounded like sarcasm. But it felt like you said I was just being sarcastic. I was just being playful. I apologize for that. Three minutes left. Do you want to do that? Okay. Say that one more time. Right. Okay. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, you came, you recorded, you saw, you assessed. Now it's time to come up with a plan. Your glows are your behaviors that you're proud of. Your grows are what you will focus on. And your sows are what you pledge to do. I want you to prioritize your areas, obviously in accordance with what was weaker. And that's what you're going to start with. Don't try to master everything at once. That can be overwhelming. But as I said, small changes can make a big difference. So I want you to take the next couple of minutes to do that. And after that, we would like for you to fill out our evaluation. All righty, right there. Thank you. All right. Are there any questions in our last 90 seconds of our time together? Thank you for your time.